Hi there, Ronnie here, coming at you with a video. Um, just my thoughts on the news about the Buffy Revival. For people who haven't watched my channel, I used to be a big fan of the show back in the day. I kind of fell out of love with it during the UPN years, season 6 and 7. It I thought the show drove off a cliff basically. Um, and whilst I can still watch the occasional episode, I'm not as enamoured as I was, and I still stand by the opinion that the show should have finished at the end of season 5. Um, there was plenty of room for spin-offs. Leave them wanting more and all that nonsense. Anyway, now we have news that Hulu, so over here in the UK it'll be Disney Plus, because we have Hulu as part of Disney Plus, are doing a revival, and that Sarah Michelle Gellar is due to reprise her role as Buffy Summers in a recurring role, which means that this is not a reboot. It'll focus on, I assume, a younger cast, with Buffy possibly in the sort of Giles-ish role as the sort of watcher, mentor. Um, um, no sooner has the news broken out than the naysayers have already started. People who just don't think the show will be a success are already jumping out of the woodwork and saying, "Oh, this is terrible. It's going to be terrible. Look at all these reboots and revivals. They've never worked." Do I think the show will work? I don't know. I don't know because it hasn't been written, it hasn't been filmed, no one's seen it. It could be excellent, it could be absolute garbage, but why don't we wait and see? I do think they are doing a couple of things right off the bat. One, not being a reboot. I think doing it as a revival is the right call. I think if they did a reboot, regardless of how good it was, whoever was playing the part of Buffy would be automatically compared to Sarah Michelle Gellar, and whether they were good, bad, or indifferent, the pressure being placed on that young lady would be astronomical, and I don't think it would be very fair to that actress. I also like that because it's a revival, you can look at Buffy through the eyes of new characters. You can see where everyone is. It allows for cameos by other members of the cast in recurring roles or a guest spot in an episode. Spike and Angel, that's going to be slightly problematic because they're vampires and they're not supposed to age. Whether something happens that means that they've become human, and then or they use some of that de-aging stuff that's been happening with films like The Irishman and Indiana Jones, to de-age them. I think is possibly the way to go. It really depends on how good the technology is at that. But the big news, and actually it wasn't news to me, the moment they said Sarah Michelle Gellar was in talks, I knew Joss Whedon would not be involved. Sarah, when the whole debacle with Joss Whedon came out, Sarah Michelle Gellar released one statement. She didn't go into details, and she's never discussed it. But she did release a statement that said that she was proud to be associated with the name Buffy Summers, but she didn't want to be associated with the name Joss Whedon, and that she stood by all victims of abuse. And I think that the standing by all victims of abuse was both a general statement to any victim of abuse and the specific allegations made against them. And part of the reason some of the naysayers are going, oh, it's going to be horrible, it's going to be horrible, is because they're saying that without Joss, Buffy won't be the same. Good! Joss is not the only the only decent writer out there, guys, and more importantly, because Joss isn't involved, it might actually be better. As I stated in another video, the man's an emotional sadist. And he doesn't know where to stop. And I think there's a nihilism in him that I think that a new incarnation or a fresh take on the show, a fresh look at the show sort of 20 years later, could well do without. Now that doesn't mean the show can't get dark. It can't deal with some serious subjects, of course it can. But it doesn't stop it being an interesting, it can still be an interesting show without being utterly nihilistic. So I actually don't have a problem with the fact that Joss Whedon isn't involved. Does that mean that certain actors may not come back? I know that he and Alison Hannigan and Alexis Denisov are still very good friends, and I think it's interesting that in the fallout from Charisma Carpenter's comments and all the support she was getting from former cast members, both Alison and Alexis stayed very silent. As I said at the time, that may be because they didn't want to get involved. That's perfectly possible. It may be that they may agree with Charisma, but they didn't want to jeopardize their friendship with Joss. That's entirely possible. It may be that they simply don't agree with Charisma, which again could be possible. But what is, unless they did say it and I've missed it, in which case, if someone's got a link to been said, then, great. But from what I've seen, neither of them have spoken about it. And they're under no obligation to speak about it. Let's get that right. No one was obligated to speak about the situation at all. But given the sheer amount of information that was being put out there, it did surprise me. Anyway, people saying about reboots and revivals not working, and they'll point to things like the Charmed reboot not working and the revival of Will and Grace not working and so on. I don't know. I was never a follower of Charmed, and I've never watched the reboot. I saw the odd Will and Grace back in the day. I haven't seen anything of the revival. Same with Frasier. But there is one show that I think has bucked the trend, and I think it's the one that Buffy should look to. The Buffy writers should look to in terms of seeing what that show has done right when looking at a Buffy revival. And that show is Cobra Kai. Because Cobra Kai has managed to take the ethos and ideology of the Karate Kid movies, put them forward to the modern day to see where those characters are now, whilst also focusing on the next generation as well. And I really like that. Cobra Kai is excellent as a show in its own right and as a wonderful continuation of I would say the three movies. I know there was the next Karate Kid, which Pat Morita did do as Miyagi, but it was Hilary Swank in one of her earliest roles. And I guess for the final season of Cobra Kai, it'd be great if they got Hilary Swank in for a cameo. But I don't mean that the Buffy writers should copy what Cobra Kai did note for note, in so much as how they captured the spirit of the original films and were able to bring it to the modern day. And that's what this Buffy revival needs to do. One of the interesting things, though, and one of the reasons why it didn't come as a surprise when the news broke, not last year actually, back in October of 23, an audio drama called Slayers, a Buffyverse story, was released, written and directed by Amber Benson and Christopher Golden, and it was set in an alternate timeline, an alternate universe, with Spike as the main character. Buffy wasn't in this universe. In this universe, Cordelia was the chosen one. She was the Slayer. And there was a new potential. And in that one, Tara was still alive. Anya was still alive. And they were setting themselves up for a season 2 when Disney cancelled it, which to me was the first sign that Disney were looking at possibly reviving the show. So this news isn't really news for me, but it does make me wonder if they're going to perhaps incorporate some of that storyline into the revival. Because I think it would be interesting to see an older, wiser Cordelia Chase, an older and wiser Anya Jenkins, an older and wiser Tara McClay. Because the fan base is very split on this, but I think the prevailing sense is that those three characters were hard done by, badly served by the storylines, and not treated well as characters and in charisma's case, especially as actors. I did see someone on Facebook who went on this rant that effectively boiled down to Joss was the director, he can do what he likes. They are actors, they are there to do what the director tells them regardless, and if he has to shout at them, scream at them, abuse them to get them to do what he wants, that's what he has to do. And how dare she get pregnant? It was very selfish of her, and I'm like, get a life. Really get a life. The tone deaf nature of that post was just extraordinary to me. But will I watch it? Well, I mean, I'm subscribed to Disney Plus, and I assume that it will be. I'm subscribed to Disney Plus here in the UK, and I'm sure it will come on to Disney. I mean, all the other seasons are on Disney Plus, so it wouldn't surprise me. And if it does, on the basis that I have it, I have Disney Plus, so it would be there. I might at least give the first couple episodes a go just to see what it's like. I remember watching the first season of Rings of Power and being fairly nonplussed about it. I wasn't offended by it, I wasn't angered by it, but I wasn't really engaged by it. I got through the first season, but I've not watched the second season and have no desire to do so. With regards to oh god, I can't even remember the name of it. That's how bad it is. There's the other fantasy series that Amazon do, and I got through halfway through the first episode and I was bored out my skull, and I've never went back to it. I know people who like the books that they're based on, and I think there's been 2 seasons of it so far, probably going to be a third. They weren't fans of it, didn't like it, didn't want to know it, were very angry about it. One of the things that happened with Buffy, because of the kind of way it fell off a cliff, is I don't get emotionally invested in shows anymore. I can enjoy them, I can watch them, I can find them great to enjoy, but I don't get emotionally invested, and the reason is that invariably so few shows stick the landing. I mean, Buffy fell apart long before it landed. The Blacklist ended really badly. Season 8 of Castle was an absolute joke. I mean, Lucifer pretty much stuck the landing. It was alright, it did its job, it did it well. I still think the show that absolutely nailed the ending was The Good Place. They did it and did it right as far as I'm concerned. But I don't I don't know whether this new Buffy show will be any good or not. If it's good, yay. If it's great, if it's bad, okay. I'm not bothered by it. And to be honest, neither should anyone else. If I'm going to be honest. Because those 7 seasons of the show as is, if you loved those, this new show, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, isn't going to change one iota of those previous 7 seasons. You could happily walk away from this new show and just enjoy the old show, and that'd be fine. It's really not needed for you to actually, So there's no point in getting angry about it. It's just, and this is where I my whole culmination. It's just a TV show. It's not going to. It's not going to affect you, and it really shouldn't. If you're placing so much emotional weight on the show being a success, you're kind of missing the point of the show. It's just there to entertain, something that I think sometimes Joss Whedon forgot. You can be thought-provoking, you can be exciting, you can deal with real emotional depth and drama, but at the end of the day, you're meant to be entertaining. First and foremost, be entertaining and thought-provoking, but be entertaining. Always remember the interview with Terry Pratchett when he was talking about what themes or things that he expected his audience to get from his book, and he said, well, first and foremost, he said, the one takeaway I want my readers to come away with is this book was worth $14.95 if that was the price of the book. As he says, if they don't have that, if they don't get that, any message, any idea that's in the book falls completely by the wayside. If you don't have this was worth my time. I'd love to see some of the other Buffy writers come in, like Jane Espenson. Maybe some of the novelists. Christopher Golden comes to mind immediately. Be great to see Amber Benson write an episode. Maybe the two of them, her and Christopher, who work so well together with us, perhaps co-writing and co-directing again. I hope it does well, but the biggest problem it's always going to have is legacy. Buffy was well regarded at the time, and in its intervening years has become this sort of legendary thing. And any revival is going to be compared with Buffy at its height rather than Buffy at its lowest, or Buffy at its median point. Not every episode of a revival is going to be as brilliant as the top tier of the original series. As I'm sure not every episode will be as absolutely risible as some of the worst episodes of the original series. A lot of them are just going to be right up there with the average to good, while it finds its feet. But what it needs to do, whilst being an acknowledgement of the original show, it needs to have its own voice. It needs to be its own show, or there's actually no point in its existence. It may as well have been a reboot. It needs to have its own voice, the same way that Cobra Kai has its own voice. It acknowledges the past, it builds on it, but it has its own voice. So I wish it well. I'll probably maybe watch an episode or two just to see what it's like. But I'm not going to get emotionally invested because I don't get emotionally invested in TV anymore. I don't get emotionally invested in any of it. And actually, I've found that to be a lot healthier for me. Just not to get involved emotionally with TV or film, or just not have an emotional reaction or get invested. But before everyone starts praising it, screaming at it. Oh, and something else that came up which annoyed me. Someone was saying real fans are excited about this. If you're not excited, you're not a real fan. Utter nonsense. Real fans can be excited about it. Real fans can be cautious about it. Real fans can be optimistic. Real fans can be pessimistic about it. Don't play this real fans card. That's just gatekeeping, and it's bloody pointless. It really is. But before anyone starts bigging this show up and hailing it as the great return, or dismissing it, let's wait and see what it is. Then, if you think it's good, applaud it. If you think it's bad, criticize it. But wait until you see what it is. At the moment, all you have is an announcement and that Sarah Michelle Gellar is in talks. I don't think she's actually completely signed yet. Wait and see. So that's all I've really got to say on this, guys. It's not something I'm going to return to. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back at some point with another video.